And good evening, commander. Oh, I've got a bit of green screen not working. All right, let's get that fixed. Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you all for the ongoing Elite Dangerous Lore Tour. We are in the Lave system. We are in the old worlds, the home of Galcop, and well, kind of the home of Galcop, and we're going to get to that. We are in a very historical location right tonight, so this is going to be an excellent. Well, I hope it's going to be an excellent, an excellent lore tour. Okay, I think we're on episode 6 now, so we're cracking on through. We're coming up to the halfway mark in the official part of the main part of the tour, so it's all going to be good. Thank you everybody who is online. Hopefully, quite a few. I can see quite a few of you in game already. I am parked in Laiv Station in the Lave system, so if you don't know where we are supposed to be, Lave is where you're supposed to go. That's Lave. And Laiv Station is where we're all rendezvousing for the first part of the tour, so that's where we're going to congregate. Okay, so Laiv Station, head there. For those of you who haven't been on this before, oh yes, a problem with my stream title. OBS gave me some kind of login problem. I just pressed the go live until it went live, so apologies if the stream title is missing. It is the lore tour tonight. We're talking about Galcop, we're talking about Lave, we're talking about the old worlds and the history therein. So apologies for OBS doing something wrong, right? Technology, most of it's working. Now, it is my very great pleasure. I have company on the stream tonight from a very dear friend of mine who I have known for many, many years, and we'll get to that as we have a chat. But it's my huge pleasure. I've got him on Discord to introduce to you my very dear friend, Dave. I'm going to get this right. Dave, I've forgotten how to say it. Dave Hughes. No, Dave Hughes is his. No, not Dave Braben. Dave Hughes. Dave Hughes, my fellow partner in crime. Now, his commander name I can never pronounce. That's exactly right. Carumba knows. I'd have to spell it. Every time I go to pronounce it, I get it wrong. So I'm going to bring him on, and he can tell me how to do it. Selezen. I've got it right. Selezen. That's how you pronounce it. Selezen. Right. Here we go. He's going to murder me now. Right. Mr. Dave Hughes, are you there? Hopefully,
yeah.
He is. Now, first, I think I've just pronounced Selezen correctly on stream for the first time ever. Is that right? Have I got it right?
You have. Yeah, I think you finally did it. Well done. It's only taken 5 years.
Right, I'm just adjusting my volume so hopefully we can hear. Now, everybody on the stream, can you hear Dave? Dave, give us a test. Say something profound. I don't know.
Profound.
Something profound, yeah.
Monkey ate my nuts. There you go. Monkeys ate my nuts.
Ah, dear, all good.
A
Excellent.
wandering minstrel.
Oh, well, there we go. Oh, that's a bit of Gilbert and Sullivan. I'm impressed. You're showing yourself to be a cultured soul, which is a good place to start, right? We can go on from there.
Can be cultured. I can pretend.
Now, we've known each other for quite some time, haven't we?
17 minutes 45 seconds. Yeah. Ages. Yeah, what is it, about 2005, something like that?
It's a long time ago, right? A long time before Elite Dangerous was ever a thing and everything like that. Now, first things first, I need to wing up with you in Elite Dangerous, right? Because ideally,
yes, I will know how to do that.
Because Dave, for everybody on the stream, is actually here with us in the game as well. So let me get the full screen, which is currently in the middle of Laiv Station. Now, do I need to send you a wing request, or do you want to send me one?
I don't know how to send one. That's the thing. I've not done a wing for 2 years.
Well, let me go and... Right, I think the easiest way... Apologies for the... I've got to find you. Blimey, there's so many people here. I've got to find you. Commander Selezen. I'm going to get that wrong at some point this evening. But I'll do my best. Right, where are you? Where's your... Why isn't this in alphabetical order, right? No, it kind of is in alphabetical order, except when it isn't.
Is it not in order?
Oh, there you go. Now I found you.
Yeah.
Right. Invite to wing. Right. You should have had a wing invite.
Yep, there it is.
Right. Can you answer that? I can see somebody already spiraling around with a very nice little Imperial courier in front of me. So with a bit of luck, If you answer that, whoops, he's just hit the
Has
station.
that worked?
I haven't got you.
Did that work?
I haven't got you in a wing yet.
It's asking about multi-crew. Why is it asking about multi-crew? What the hell?
Let me try that again. Hang on a minute. Where are you in this list? Right, so well, if this doesn't work, we'll just have to fingers crossed. It should work, right? I'm just going to try. There we go. You're there, right? Invite to wing. That's what I want to do. So there you go. You should have been invited. Wing invite failed. Commander is in multi-crew. Right, you need to not be in multi-crew, Dave.
I'm not. I'm not in multi-crew. How the hell am I in multi-crew? How do I get out of multi-crew?
No, you're still in multi-crew according to my end. I don't know what's going on there. Right, in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly out of the space station. You figure out what's going on at that end. Never mind. Right, I've got to remember how to fly. Right, so hello to everybody on the chat, by the way. While Dave and I figure out our demonstrate our expertise with the multi-crew functions of Elite Dangerous, I'm going to get myself outside the space station, see who's here, see who's in my... who's... Someone's just put in the comment, this is class so far. It's really professional, right? There's loads of people out here.
It's your work thing.
Yeah, I know, it's... We can blame the instancing. I'll try that again in a minute. Right, there's loads of people out here, which is really cool. So I'm just going to hang around in front of the space station for a bit. Let me try this again. You're definitely not in multi-crew, right?
No, I seem to be in multi-crew, and I don't know how to get back out of multi-crew again.
Ah, I don't know how you do that. I think I've used multi-crew once.
If anybody in chat can tell this idiot who's been playing this game for 5 years how to get out of this multi-crew thing, that'd be great.
I can't do anything at the moment. So anyway, right. Well, while you figure that out, I'm going to talk a bit about why we're here. Right. So we are, we're just outside the. Actually, I need to switch to the external view so people can see themselves. And look, people are crunching my ship and all sorts of things here. Oh, there we go. We're in front of Lave. That's quite a nice view. Look, there we are, in front of Lave Station. So I'm going to zoom out there. No. That view.
Right, I'm out.
You're out.
Right, okay.
Right, good. Right, hang on. Let me send you a thingy then. It's all technical stuff. I've just got to find you again. Why can't I? Right, invite to wing. Right, you should have received a wing invite. Did it work?
I don't want multi-crew. Go away.
Yes!
Right, that should be it. Yes!
It's worked.
Oh,
that was painful. Right, there we go. There we go. Right, so anyway, so you're in the station. I'm just parked outside, so if you fancy coming out and joining me, then please do. Make your way outside the ship. I'm just going to get my...
Outside the ship?
No, outside the space station. That's where we want to be. Right, I'm just going to zoom out here. If I can remember how to do it. There we go. So we've got Laiv Station. Now we're in an iconic place in Elite. Why is Lave so important? So this is where, when you start up the original game, back in 1984, this is where you come up. Now I'm going to actually do that on the stream right now, because some of you need to see this, okay? Because we're here in the year, what year is it in Elite Dangerous now? 3306, right? We are in the original game, which I'm just going to fire up. So this is actually, we're kind of doing a bit of time travel here, because if I can get my computer to play ball. What's it doing? Oh, it's going smoothly this evening, isn't it? There we go, it's coming up. I'm just loading up the Spectrum emulator, right? So if I load up the original Elite, which I'm just doing on the stream now, right? So there was a spinning Cobra. This for those of you who haven't seen this, some of you will, if you've been following along the Lore Tour, you will know about this. But this is the original Elite on the ZX Spectrum, which is the version I had for reasons we won't go into now. And if I start the game from the beginning, you'll notice you start in the Lave system. It says present system, Lave. And if I launch from the space station, listen to those amazing 80s sound effects. You will find that there's a planet ahead of you, and that is the planet Lave. And if we look behind us, there is the Coriolis space station. So now I'm in 2 time zones at the same time, right? All I can see is the rear view of my original Elite, now showing the Coriolis space station, and I can see on my Elite Dangerous the rear view, because I'm in the camera mode, of the Coriolis space station, and it's the same one. Now, Dave, do you know what year the original Elite was kind of set in? Do we ever settle on a year specifically for it?
3125 apparently.
3125. Okay, so we're looking at in the 8-bit window we're seeing the year 3125, and in the Elite Dangerous window we're seeing the year 3306. So that's quite cool. Now there's something else I've noticed here, that the space station's spinning the other way, and I don't know. So at some point between the year 3125 and the year 3306, they stopped the space station spinning and then started spinning it the other way. I have no idea why they've done that. It's spinning clockwise on the Spectrum, and it's spinning anti-clockwise in Elite Dangerous. I wonder if that's changed between the in the other Elites as well. I have to check that out. That's just one of those things. But never mind. There we go. So, Dave, the Lave system. What's do we know why it was special in the original Elite, and why is it therefore special still today? Give us a skinny.
In the original Elite, it was the headquarters of the Galactic Cooperative of Worlds, which basically was the organisation you worked for, is probably the best way of saying it.
Yep.
As a kind of trade, merchant navy pilot who could do military stuff as well. And you started off life as a trader there, because this is where the Galcop Flight Academy was based. It was actually on the station, I believe, as well.
Okay, so actually you had to come here to get your license to fly a ship.
This is correct.
Wowzers. Okay. So you'd have thought that'd be quite a bottleneck, actually, wouldn't you?
Well, the best part of it is that according to the manual, you could use the Laiv Station as a practice for your docking procedures.
All right, so it was actually encouraged, wasn't it? So you fly
inherently
out.
Risky.
Yeah, people flying in and out of the space station all day with L plates on, effectively, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
So in the original game, Galcop was, well, it was kind of everything, wasn't it? What did it do as an organisation? And what was unique about Galcop?
It was kind of, I would say, is if you know what the Alliance is, obviously you know what the Alliance is if you play this game a lot. It's very much a precursor to the Alliance.
Okay.
And the backstory for it essentially was that there was a mission to this area of space which is called the Old Worlds, and they found this whole bunch of planets that had one planet, one star.
Yep.
And Lave was the first one they colonized.
Okay, so the one planet, one star thing obviously is a slight sop to the original 8-bit game, right? Because it wasn't able to do anything more than that.
In the old days, when they actually believed in putting a little bit of justification as to why the game had certain limitations.
Yeah.
And
so
that was down to the guy that wrote the manual.
Okay, so the game only had one star and one planet per system, right? But the lore actually embraced that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so they had this area of space. So you mentioned the Old Worlds. What's that?
Well, it was basically a name given to this area of space.
Okay.
So, as I say, the Old Worlds, the definition of it was an area of space where there was an interesting set of systems with a single planet and a single star, all clustered around kind of 10 light year radius, something like that. So that included Lave, Listi, Diesel, T-Nisla, Riorte, etc.
Okay, so there's and how many Old Worlds are there? Is there a definitive list of Old Worlds, or is it just a?
It's essentially, I think the way that headcanon works, because it was never officially confirmed by anybody.
Yeah.
Was that when Frontier Elite 2 came out, the planets in the region around Lave, or the systems in the region around Lave, were classed as the Old Worlds. The the ones that came over from Elite into Frontier were classed as that.
Right. Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Right. Okay. So there's a collection of worlds which were in the original game, which have been adopted by the subsequent games, and then they've sort of been retrospectively lorified as the old worlds based on what's in the other games, or
Kind of, yeah, kind of halfway.
Right.
They've adopted them as the old worlds, but they've kind of by the time of Frontier, dropped the whole single planet, single star thing. Many of the systems, like Teen Isla, Xeons, for example, were actually populated with more stuff in the system.
Right. Okay. So they've sort of adapted them, but is hang on, I'm just struggling here with a little bit of the external camera control. I'm getting there. There we go. I got told off on one of my earlier streams, right, for not zooming the camera out so other people can kind of be around and see the ships in the game. So I've done that now. So we've got the external camera view, so we can see everybody else effectively arsing about.
Yeah, I'm just buzzing some of the players.
That's good. Excellent. So we can see a whole bunch of people flying around. So so we've got a collection of planets. So in the lore, were these? We've talked about the generation ships that left Earth, right? In the kind of from the 21st century onwards. Roughly when does Lave and all these planets? Where in the timeline do they get colonized?
Oh God, you're asking me numbers.
Is it? I mean, I've kind of got vague indication. 25th,
23 something.
23.
It runs in my head 26, but I don't think it's 26. So 26 was theoretically the start of the Thargoid War. So
Right, okay.
I'm going to say roughly 23, 2400, around about those centuries.
Okay, so they're and what are they colonized by generation ships from Sol?
Were indeed.
They were. So okay, so we talked about the generation ships before. So we've got here to this old area of space, and is there any background to what the rationale for the early existence of Galcop? Did they have any sort of founding principles, or did they have what sort of structure did they have? Because this is obviously the Federation exists, right? That came out of the Sol, and the Empire starts in Achenar around the similar sort of time. So this is forming at around about the same time as all that's going on, right?
I think it's a good 100 or so, if not more, years later. So the Federation and the Empire are already in existence by the time this happens.
Right.
But the kind of detailed background stuff about it was when the old worlds were colonized, they generally had their own. So they became self-supporting in a certain amount of time, and then they became reliant on each other for trade, and then they formed something called the Old Worlds Alliance.
Okay.
Or the Old Worlds Alliance. So there was a precursor organization just in the local area, but as the Federation and the Empire started to get a little bit more zealous around their area, they banded together and created a bigger organization. Now the way the original kind of Elite Dangerous lore in the background before the game actually became live was kind of being pointed was that the Federation and Empire were actually underhandedly trying to gain control of that area. There was a lot of odd goings on, shall we say, that were kind of pushing the old worlds into a very dangerous political situation. So they formalized the arrangement they had and became the Galactic Cooperative of Worlds, which was basically put around to be kind of self-defense, semi-autonomous military, kind of, just to offer protection, an independent option, and some protection and buffer zone against the evil Empire.
Okay, so the Empire is growing, the Federation was growing in strength. They were obviously at war with each other as well, intermittently throughout this era, right? And then the Galcop sort of defends itself. Is that it structures its technology around defense, but it exists for a long time, because in the original game it's the organization in which you as a pilot exist and work kind of for, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. It's an interesting one because it's never actually specifically said in game.
Yeah.
In the original Elite game itself, what you do, who you work for, all that kind of stuff. The manual is where all this information is held. So it mentions the Galactic Cooperative Worlds. It mentions the only thing that actually in game mentions any kind of structure or hierarchy is when it mentions His Majesty's Space Navy.
Okay,
which
so
actually contradicts everything that's in the manual. Interestingly enough.
Consistent lore. That's what we like, right? Consistent
Oh
lore.
yeah, it was the 80s. It was a fun time.
Well, it's interesting because I've shown the manual and I've shown the Dark Wheel novella to folks on stream. So I've got my original ZX Spectrum copy kicking about, and that's a thing that was very much 80s games anyway, wasn't it? It was more. You got your instructions, you got your background, you got your lore, you got your environment from the kind of game manual.
That's the interesting thing. Elite was one of the first games to do that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking everyone says that the original Elite was kind of the be all and end all of 3D gaming, but I think it also set the bar for what you could bundle along with your computer game. I mean, companies like Microprose jumped all over that when they brought out their flight simulators and stuff like that, and that's actually started packing fully detailed technical manuals for the plane and fully instruction manuals how you can fly, and that kind of stuff.
And so I remember,
I think Elite is the root of all that.
Excellent. I mean, it was. I mean, everyone talks about it in terms of vector graphics and procedural generation, don't they, as a technical accomplishment?
Yeah.
But like you say, the novel that came with it, the flight manual, and I think I'm right in saying that the manual itself was in large parts also written by Robert Holstock. Is that right?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the manual is also, it's not just technical, it's full of little tidbits of lore, like the generation ships that obviously weren't in the original game, right? But they they were sort of alluded to, weren't they?
Space dredgers, generation ships. Oh yeah.
Yep,
it's
all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that's where
it's all fictional.
Yeah, and we went and saw a generation ship last week, and that generation ship lore comes from the original game and Robert Holstock's imagination, presumably. So
that's pretty much accurate, I think. Yeah.
So in the original game, we flew a Cobra Mark III, and therefore we were working for Galcop. Is that we were part of that organisation, which feels a little bit in some ways like the Pilots Federation ED today. Is it? It's got similar sort of kind of rules and regulations, perhaps.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a grey area between the original Elite and Frontier as to what the Pilots Federation basically was, and the way that some of the lore that was being discussed at the time when Elite Dangerous was launched kind of says that the Pilots Federation concept was invented by Galcop and then it was adopted by everybody else.
Okay.
Some people kind of started trying to say that Galcop basically was the Pilots Federation, but that's not entirely true.
No, because
the Pilots Federation came out of that concept.
And in ED today, in Elite Dangerous today, in the year 3306, Galcop is no longer exists. It's gone as a political entity. Is that fair?
This is true. Yeah, it's been consigned to the dustbin of history.
So
that's a very interesting conversation that will take a while to go through.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But I just want to sort of put Galcop as a political entity starts in maybe 23rd, 24th century. Is certainly strong and viable at the point of the original games, which we reckon are the year 3125. But by 3306, it's effectively history in terms of the lore.
Yeah, the breakup of Galcop, according to the actual official lore as well, this has remained fairly consistent. Okay. Is around 2175.
Right. Okay. So that's sort of you mean 3175.
That's what I said. Yes.
Yes, that's what you said. So yeah. I don't know why I interrupted you there. 30. So that's prior to the second game, isn't it? So that's prior to Frontier Elite 2.
Yeah, it's 25 years before Frontier Elite 2 set. That's right.
Okay, so somewhere between the first and the second game in the timeline, the Galcop undergoes a major calamity, effectively, which we'll get to. Yeah. Just sort of positioning all these things in the timeline for various people who kind of watch it. Okay, now let's step back from that a little bit. You've already mentioned a couple of tantalising things. Now you've talked about the construction of the lore for ED prior to the game launch. Now I'm aware of this because I used it, but I wasn't involved in this piece. So do you want to give us a little potted history of what happened? And how because you were an instrumental person in actually writing some of this lore, and that's an interesting story in of itself. So do you want to give us a a tour of what happened and how you
Yeah,
got involved,
yeah.
and what's your history with Elite?
Players.
Yeah,
I'll stop buzzing players while I'm talking about that.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, if I can go far enough back here, when I was a huge fan of Elite, back when it came out in 1984. The Spectrum version was my birthing to it, so that was 1985.
good
I was
man,
handed
good
a tape
man.
by someone, and essentially that's what I mean. Down this whole long path of what it's become. Essentially, the background stuff, the very fact that it was kind of like what we would now call kind of a sandbox game. You don't have any mission structure. You just did what you want.
Yep.
That to me was inspirational. I mean, my imagination and my love of space flight and my love of everything about space comes from that, primarily. In fact, I wouldn't even say primarily. I'd say pretty much entirely.
Entirely, because I mean, we had things like we had things like Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica TV shows and films around about that era, didn't we? So they were on the telly as well.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember them quite fondly alongside. Yeah, I'd be able to watch those on the TV and then go into my bedroom and play Elite, right? Pretend I was Starbuck and stuff like that. Yeah, as teenagers did in the 80s.
Oh, what the hell I've done? I've just dropped out of the game for some reason. So
Oh no!
I'm not concentrating properly. I have actually totally dropped out of the game.
You busted it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just have to restart.
So Glenn has just asked the question that I'm hoping you'll answer, which is, what's the background knowledge of this lore? Do tell. So you've been a big fan of the game since it came out, same as me, yeah.
Let me finish the original question.
Yep.
So yeah, my history on it is then So Elite was Elite, and I started writing stories and short stories and fan fiction and designing stuff and doing little technical manuals for the Cobra Mark III around about that time.
Yep.
And that kind of developed into this love of all things technical and space related. When Frontier Elite 2 came out, obviously that changed the goalposts because Galcop was gone. It wasn't even mentioned in the lore. It wasn't even mentioned in the manuals. Again, with a detailed set of stories and all that kind of stuff in the background for it. But there was a huge discrepancy, and that bugged me. The flight model was different. Lave and everybody was still there. There was whole different things. You had to pay a fine to start at Lave. It's like, where did that fine come from?
That was really interesting, wasn't it? Because when you fired up the game, you had a choice of start locations, didn't you? I can actually show. I'm going to just literally show that very quickly while you keep talking. But I'll just show you that so people spot it, because this is where we find out that the lore of the game is actually changing subtly, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. I mean, it was never addressed. I mean, all that stuff was never ever addressed. We didn't have the internet and all this whole social media and all this inputs and contact to the community side of gaming. In those days, the internet was basically a dream at that stage.
Yep.
It was around. It'd been around for a little while, but it wasn't a public thing back in the 90s. You kids don't know how lucky you are.
I've just literally fired up the DOS box there, so it's now showing the loading screen of Frontier. I'm just going to make sure it runs at a smooth rate. There we go. Now if I click there, it there we go. It basically, we've got 3 start positions there. We've got one Ross 145 system recommended start position. Then we've also got Mars, and then we've got the Lave system. And like you say, if you click on Lave, it gives you the Cobra at Lave, exactly where we are again. So this is the 3200. But like you say, we have to pay a fine, don't we?
Mm. 70,000 credits or something.
I can't remember what it is now, but yeah. And when does that fine become payable? Is it when we visit worlds just outside of the old world section that we're in? I can't remember now. But there we are. We're
no, I can't remember the mechanic of how you pay.
It's something like that, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we in the second game we have to pay a fine. So something's happened, and you were talking about the fact that the second game had changed the lore of what was going on.
Yeah. So there was nothing really that explained why there was this fine or why the galaxy was so different. So we kind of had to make that up. So the original worlds of the original worlds of Galcop were there. There was no galactic hyperdrive. There was no 7 light year limit on your hyperdrive. You could change all the stuff. So the technology was totally different. Everything was different. And the original game, Elite, didn't have Earth or Mars or any of those systems or any of the actual proper astronomical stuff because of its limitations. But that was never addressed. So what I did then was I started to put together in my head why all this, because in my head it's always about the why.
Yeah, and continuity between.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. If the games are related, then surely the universe is as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So there must be something. So I put together a timeline to explain what had actually happened, and this is where we started to get relevant to answer your question. Put together a timeline and a whole dissertation on how everything actually tied together. That became quite popular with a certain member of the Oolite forums named Mr. Wagar.
I remember this because we first came across each other in Olite, didn't we? Which was a fan-made remake of the original. Oolite, sorry. I call it Oolite. All right then. I shall bow to your superior pronunciation because mine's obviously rubbish. This is where we first met each other. It was about 2004, 2005, something like that.
I think it was 2005.
Was it?
I think certainly we started talking big time in 2008.
Yeah,
I think we kind of crossed swords a couple of times on the early forums between 2005 and 2008.
And that's where we met, sort of virtually online on the internet as it was in those days. And I remember very clearly being. I mean, I was mostly a fan of the original game, and I didn't play the later ones very much because I sort of missed them for various reasons. And I remember coming across your timeline and then looking at the second and the third game, going, "This guy's really spent some time here." Working out why the second game is totally discontinuity with the first game.
I have a very interesting JPEG or a very interesting Photoshop file, which has the map from the original Elite's first galaxy and the map from Frontier.
Okay.
Oriented in various different ways to try and get planets to match up with each other. I've just sent you a wing request, by the way.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Let me just.
So that was kind of how I got involved with lore for the first time, and obviously that timeline was kind of picked up by a few people, yourself included. You wrote some books around it, and obviously some different people put together some stuff about it, and it fed its way into Uli and fed its way into some people's heads. And then, of course, time rolled merrily on. Frontier First Encounters came along, and we saw all the different stuff that was happening with that. We got some background lore in the Thargoids, which again, although it was a pretty naff game in terms of stability, and basically it was called a demo on that was being sold for money.
Yep.
So we blew past all that. Elite became kind of my go-to game to get that Elite feel, and then Elite 4 became Elite Dangerous in around about 2013.
Yep.
And obviously there was the whole Kickstarter thing around that. There was a lot of different people involved with the Kickstarter. The writers packs came out, which you all remember is why we're all sitting here talking to Drew now.
Yep.
Because he kickstarted a Kickstarter and got in the press.
I did. I mean, that's an entire story. I have covered a bit. We'll have to do that one properly at some point. But it was basically lots of old fans of the game kind of emerged in the Kickstarter, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel that the Elite community was the first big push for knowledge. I'm probably going to be argued with on that by several people at certain points in time, but I honestly feel that we in the Elite community basically pushed, and that knowledge got so far out there, and obviously I think we contributed a fair amount to the original push.
I think there's definitely a sense, or at least there certainly was a sense in the Kickstarter and in the few years following it, that the Elite community had sort of carried the torch for the game, because the last official game was 95 was the third Elite game, and then obviously nothing until 2012 officially.
I thought it was 93. I could be wrong.
Was it 3? It might be. I can't remember. So it's a long time ago. So that's virtually an entire generation of time where there wasn't an official Elite at all, and the only thing that there was the fan-made games and the fans who were still kind of living the game. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you saw the Kickstarter presumably, and you saw, Elite was coming back. So what was your sort of reaction to that when you first saw it?
I was happy. I was glad it was coming back at last. I thought it was about bloody time. I was glad it was getting the name Elite back because it needed that, and I'm glad it was going back to the roots. And obviously, you were getting the Cobra, you were getting all the stuff that we'd been crying out for. At the time we were talking about space legs and planet landings and all that kind of stuff being a thing.
Yep.
That was exciting to me. Okay, it hasn't happened as of yet, but hopefully, fingers crossed, 2020.
Something's coming, isn't it?
I'm hoping so. Yeah. They keep saying it's a big thing this year, and we shall see.
We're very excited. But you got involved though. So I mean, I got a writer's pack and I started writing a book. But one of the first things I was after, okay, well, what's the official law, right? Are we talking about a reboot of Elite?
I'm getting slowly towards that, yeah.
Or are we talking? Or are we talking a continuation of story? At the time, I was pitching for the book. I didn't know the answer to that, and then, and all the work you had done was, you'd published on your website, hadn't you? There was a timeline there because I remember referring to that, and but it was everything at that point was totally unofficial. It didn't have any official sanction at all, did it? So what happened?
Right. I was approached. Well, actually, no. I can't remember exactly what order this went in, but there was two things I did at that time. I was approached indirectly by Frontier through a third party to say, we've seen your timeline. We're interested in doing some of that stuff and putting it into the lore.
Cool.
What do you think? Would you be willing to work with us and try and include some of that stuff? And I also did my own Kickstarter for my own book project at the same time. And I think I did the Kickstarter in that first, and I think that was what brought that to people's attention. That was why I was kind of approached.
Okay, so so that's pretty cool, actually, right? So Frontier actually, via a third party, came along and said, "We've seen your stuff. We quite like it. Will you work with us?" So that's, for a lifelong fan of Elite, that must have been quite a cool moment. Yeah.
It was pretty cool because when I was working with Michael Brooks and I was working with David Braben, I was getting emails from David Braben, who was somebody at that point I thought, this is one of the people who contributed towards something that's affected my entire life. Yeah. So it's like meeting your hero.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah.
It was a big thing. Yeah. So of course we were in a big email distribution group together discussing all the lore. So I was asked to contribute towards the writers' packs for the authors to refer to as part of their writing projects. So I had some input into the Federation documentation, the background of the Empire, the background of the actual universe itself, some of the Thargoid stuff, but specifically I was asked to draft the Old World's background documentation and the Galcop background documentation.
Perfect. Which is one of the reasons. Which is one of the big reasons I've got you here tonight, because you are the man. Okay, you are Mr. Galcop. So it's again we'll come to the interesting part of that later. But again, I was quite highly honoured. I mean, it was a very painful process trying to get straight what had been in my head canon for years and trying to align that with this game. So there was a lot of back and forth discussions. Yep.
And I mean, getting an email from David Braben one day, you see that pop up on your phone, you think, oh my god,
that's not something to be taken lightly, is it?
Oh, it was pretty awesome. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So you got to contribute some of the stuff that you'd kind of imaginated, your headcanon, as you say, into the official lore, presumably in part, right? They didn't just take everything and go, yes, that's fine. There was like you say, a bit of to and fro deciding what they were going to include and what they weren't going to include, that sort of stuff.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was kicked out. There was a lot of stuff that was put in. Obviously, David Braben wanted to pass it because David Braben takes everything and puts it through his own brain and then puts in what he wants and takes out what he doesn't want.
Yep.
We had two totally separate drafts about the Galcop history, and at that point, the Galcop organization was huge. It was the thing we'd seen in Elite, essentially the galaxy spanning 2,000 odd worlds, major player in the galaxy.
Yep.
Completely in the line of fire of the Thargoid invasion and all that kind of stuff. It was huge.
Okay.
It was the original concept I had was a kind of utopian thing. It was a little bit too happy, and he said there was some. He said there's something. It's okay, but there's something just not fundamentally right. Can you give it another go? So I went down the dark path, and I took Galcop's political background into a much darker place than it had been before.
Right.
And that seemed to be very much more acceptable to Mr.
Okay, because he seems to like sort of quite dystopian, always humanity is in conflict with itself. Nothing ever gets utopian. I get the impression from having met him a couple of times and various other things that he said he doesn't like Star Trek. Okay, he doesn't like the idea of humanity bettering itself and getting out there and becoming this sort of utopian organisation. Mankind is basically just remains selfish and nasty and horrible to everybody. We just have better tech.
Yeah, he's very much more of a Star Wars, I think. Yeah, that's the impression I got anyway.
Yeah, so that's why the Elite universe has the tone it does. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
I mean that process kind of we'll finish off. We got everything released. The Galcop, the last thing that was worked on was the Thargoid documentation, and that was top secret, hush hush, because that all feeds into the ongoing plot. So even the group, because at that point it was myself, T. James, who wrote the Out of the Darkness book.
That's the only official book I think that talks about Thargoids, isn't it? Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, my RPG wasn't allowed to really have any Thargoid content in it, because he was quite happy to have background about pretty much everything else, but anything to do with Thargoid explanations or any kind of science behind their existence was immediately cut from the book. So that was very, very
super hush hush. And that was right at before the game came out, so they were obviously trying to keep a level of mystery around the Thargoids, which makes perfect sense. So was Galcop originally going to be in ED as a thing, or was that an early possibility, or was that something that was out quite quickly?
I think they wanted to acknowledge that it had existed, but I think as everything progressed, I don't think there was enough space to put a lot of stuff in about it. And as the lore books came out a long time before the RPG did, as you're probably aware. And even between the time that those lore books came out and everybody else's novels were published and the RPG was finalised and finally nailed down, there was a kind of fundamental shift in where they wanted to place Galcop. It was suddenly being classed rather than being something that was core to how the galaxy was, or how the humanity's place in the galaxy was kind of formed, and being a big player back in the day and all that.
Yep.
It was reduced to kind of ancient history.
Yep.
And by this point in time, it's all but forgotten, and the contribution that they had was all but forgotten. And we can see from some of the little clues around the place, and especially the fact that there's beacons being put into the Lave system explaining what happened to Galcop, that there is still some kind of thing there. I mean, I don't know if you want to go into it, but I do have more headcanon on this, which is something I thought was actually going to play into some of the storylines that were coming through the game. But obviously now that lore has been kind of knocked on the head, that may not happen, which is a shame.
Yeah, which is a shame, because there's a... what you've already intimated out, that the Federation and the Empire were doing some sort of skullduggery to undermine Galcop. Sounds like a story that should be told, but I'm not really aware that it's ever been expanded in any great detail outside of those original kind of lore documents, which of course are not public, are they? We can't share them, even though we have them. Yep.
They're still NDA'd.
Yeah, indeed. So we're stuck with what's in the game.
Maybe we can speculate. I mean, I'm allowed to speculate along with everybody else, as long as I don't confirm that what I'm saying is something that's in the books. So, over the last few years, that's essentially what I've done. I've gone onto different people's streams, and I've had my own stream saying basically how I think things are, and tried not to say anything that was in the books overtly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, some of the stuff that's in the beacons, and some of the stuff that's going on with the INRA bases that are being found across the galaxy, that kind of stuff. And even some of the stuff that's happening with the Thargoids now, and the way that this is actually being played out, is actually very, very close to some of the stuff that was in those lower concepts, and some of the stuff that I put in the RPG and wasn't allowed to. So yes, I do have a fairly good idea that. I mean, I think I've always been very keen on the secrets and lies aspects, because it's a dystopian universe that we live in. I've always been keen on the secrets and lies, that essentially the Federation and the Empire essentially are lying to everybody about everything that's going on, about the Thargoids, about the history of the Thargoids.
Yeah.
And for example, I mean, everybody who's played Elite and knows the background stuff, and I'm not saying anything secret in terms of this, but the Thargoid War that was featured in Elite was all the documentation behind that says that it was nearly 300 years long.
That's right, yeah. So that was a big thing in the original game, right? That we were at war with the Thargoids, yeah?
It was a long, long war. And part of the reason why Galcop had become so big was that they were on the front line of this war against the Thargoids, because they were coming from Galcop's area of space. That was why they were kind of there. Obviously, as then things expanded with the Federation and the Empire and into Elite Dangerous' lore, then obviously those organizations were there in the background as well, and formed some alliances with Galcop to try and fight that off. But then you fast forward 300 years, and you've Thargoid war has been reduced to essentially a few skirmishes in 3125.
Yeah.
But it started in 3125 and then went on until about 3150.
So it's sort of downplayed the Thargoids quite dramatically there, hasn't it? Because we get the impression that it was a massive war, and I think there's a mention in the original manual, something along the lines of the Navy is engaged with the Thargoids in deep space, but occasionally we see them in kind of civilized areas, and that's why in the original game you'd occasionally see a Thargoid, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So I mean, the big war zones were packed full of ships, and you wouldn't want to go anywhere near that with a fine tooth comb.
Nope.
But yeah, they would sometimes team up with people, or because you would see Thargoid ships sometimes on the Spectrum version teamed up with Sidewinders, and in Mega you'd see them teamed up with wolves. With the wolf mark. Yeah. Remember that. So there was all this stuff going on in the background, and to me, it's what's kind of coming across to me is that this is all Federation propaganda or Imperial propaganda or a bit of both. They say that no, the war wasn't as bad as all that. You know, it was 25 years roughly. You know, it was horrible, it was terrible, but it wasn't all that long, and it wasn't all that bad. All the mycoid virus stuff that was common knowledge in First Encounters was all secret as well. So you know, there's a lot of stuff going on there.
So in a sort of stepping away from the lore for a moment, it's almost like whilst we as the player in the game of Elite saw things happen, in the universe of Elite Dangerous, what we saw has been almost ridiculed and squashed by the Federation and the Empire to say no, actually that didn't happen, and yet because we've played those games, we believe it to be true. Is that kind of right?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, the players know that this stuff happened.
Yep.
Is the way they operate, and the people, the commanders we play in game don't know anything about it, and the people obviously in the galaxy who are hanging around there and doing all this stuff,
they don't know either.
They don't know anything about it either. So I mean, it's an interesting dichotomy, and I think again some of the stuff with the beacons and the INRA bases and some of the stuff that was getting bandied around on the Galnet stuff. Especially, I mean, it even ties into some of the stuff that you've done in game. You know, with the Salome missions and all that kind of stuff.
All based
so there's a lot of secrets out there.
All based off that. Yeah. Okay. So that's quite interesting. So there's obfuscation and secrets and all sorts of cool stuff that's going around. Excellent. Right. What I suggest we do at this point? There's a place we need to go. Right. You and me. It's very dear to us both, and we need to go there.
Oh.
So I'm just going to get everybody on the chat and everybody in game to lock on to the Tianizla system, and we're going to jump there because we need to talk about the Tianizla system in some detail, because it's very dear to you and me. It's probably dearer to you than even it is to me. Okay, so that's where we're going to go next. So I've just locked that on as a hyperspace destination. So I don't even know where you are, Dave. Are you in the station, or are you outside with me?
Outside. I don't think we're in the same instance at the moment.
Okay, so hopefully we'll join up when we get to Tianizla.
That's how it should be. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, right. So everybody jump to the Tianizla system, and we'll rendezvous there. I'm just going to fly my ship around. Tianizla is amazingly exactly 7 light years away from Lave. How about that for coincidence? And I've still got I just noticed I've still got my undercarriage up. That's not going to work. Right, so here we go. Hyperspace to Tianizla.
Got your undercarriage alive again, are you?
Yeah, after all these years, I still can't fly properly. Oddly enough, I'm playing the Spectrum version on Saturday on the stream as well, and I want to try and capture the missions for posterity, because I've been searching online everywhere for anybody who's ever caught the ZX Spectrum missions and put them on YouTube, and nobody seems to have ever done it. So I'm on a bit of a mission to try and capture on the stream the Spectrum missions activating. And I don't even know how many missions there are definitively. So that's going to be a thing. Right, I can see you. I can see you. There we are. We are in the same instance. That's good. Right. So we need to find a beacon because, alas, there is only a beacon, and it is called Curious Transmission, partially decoded. That's where we want to go. It's a POI. So head to Curious Transmission, partially decoded. I'm going to Super Cruise Assist. That's actually quite a nice thing. It's kind of like automatic.
That's a thing?
It is a thing. Yeah, I only recently learned how to use it. You have to buy an extra module, and you can basically point your ship at the destination, and it just does Super Cruise for you. It's quite handy, especially for streaming, right? Because I can take my hands off the controls and just wait for the counter to run down.
No more loops of shame. It's almost sad.
Yeah. No, that's right. It does away with all that sort of stuff. So it is quite good. Now, what's special? What now that we're here? What's special about the Tir Nizla system, Dave? Why is it? Why are we here?
There's a variety of answers I could give to that, but I think the main one you're pointing at is it's the graveyard.
It is the graveyard. The graveyard. Everybody talks about the graveyard. What's the graveyard?
The graveyard was featured in the Dark Wheel novel, which was supplied with the original Elite, and it's a place. It's basically a memorial to commanders who have died in the line of duty, as it were, under Galcop. And essentially, if you've been very good and you deserve a place, then you and your ship will be interred in the graveyard.
So if you're a worthy person in the history of the galaxy, you get to die, be not quite buried, but interred, I suppose is the right word, isn't it? Oh, are you still there, Dave?
Yes, I'm still here.
No, sorry.
I'm still here.
It went silent. That's right. So we this is the resting place of the good and the great. At least it is in the era of Galcop. Yes.
It is. Yeah. It's the place to go. Like that cemetery in America where all the famous people go. It's the kind of equivalent of that.
Yeah. And it's mentioned in the Dark Wheel novella, which is obviously by Robert Holstop. And it's if memory serves, that's where the Cobra Mark III is kind of first introduced as well, isn't it?
It is, yes. Whoa, that's a big orc. Yes, because that's where Commander Ryder goes, or Commander Ryder and Commander Fields go to check out what they're going to do.
And they pinch a ship, don't they? They actually steal one.
They do. They steal. Oh God, what's the name?
It's a dead guy's ship, isn't it? I can't.
Yeah, it's a dead guy's ship, basically.
It's a dead guy's ship. Yep, excellent. But kind of from a storytelling perspective of Elite, this is where the game starts, isn't it? This is kind of almost where we're introduced to the Dark Wheel. We're introduced to Raxler. We're introduced to.
He's trying to crash into me.
Somebody is. I've got commanders. There we are. Look, it's an adder is giving you a hard time by the look of it. There we are. Look, we're in the same instance and we're pointing at you. And you've got the wireframe Cobra paint job. Well done. That's exactly what we should be having at this point. Let me zoom out there. So this graveyard is what? Is it a collection? It's a collection. Supposed to be a collection of dead ships. Grave markers. It's supposed to be patrolled by kind of special police ships, isn't it? And all sorts of things are supposed to be going on. And it's the kind of core, the fundamental starting point of the entire Elite franchise, and yet it isn't here.
That's it. Yeah.
This is a bit of a sore point for you and me, really, isn't it?
Yes, and everybody keeps ignoring us.
I know. What can we do?
It's just terrible.
But it kind of feels to me like like we had we had, we started Star Trek, but the Earth wasn't present, or we had Star Wars, a Star Wars game, and there was no Tatooine. It feels like it's such a fundamental thing.
It's up there with that.
It's really up there, and yet, we were told it was coming, as I recall. I'm pretty sure in one of the Lave conventions, the Lave cons, we were told it was definitely coming, and then it seems to have been quietly never spoken of ever again. So I don't know what happened, but I've always commented on it. It's a thing I would expect to see, and ironically, the only game, only elite type game, should I say, where it does in fact exist, or at least it optionally exists, is in Elite, isn't it?
Is it?
And who created it for Elite?
Originally, it was me. Can't tell a lie. It's my fault. Yeah, it was that was that was a labour of love itself.
Yeah.
Me and guys, our exact heretic, who comes onto Elite Dangerous now and again, and Rick, kind of teamed up and put together the thing. So I did all the maths trying to work out how the monuments would be deployed. I had a little station there.
Yep.
Rick made up some ships to patrol the graveyard and all that kind of
stuff. Exactly as the game describes it, right?
Yes, and it was exactly the midpoint between the star and the planet.
Yep.
In game.
Now
that was a description from somewhere or other. But the problem was that as soon as we tried to put it into the game fell over because it was just so much stuff.
That's awesome. Now I've actually just fired up Elite over the top of Elite Dangerous, which may blow my PC
that
up.
Purple last touches my ship, I am going to go daft.
But what I do have in here is I'm going to start in easy mode, and oddly enough, in easy mode, Elite starts in the Tion Isla star system. Okay, and I do have, I believe, on my copy of Elite, the graveyard loaded. So if I can remember how to fly this game, I haven't played Elite for a while. I'm just going to see if I can get it to go. I can't even get out of the space station. Oh, there we go. Right. So for those of you watching at the moment on the screen who haven't seen this before, this is a fan remake of the original Elite game. Elite. Oh God, I'm going to go more my things. Elite. Yeah, the original Elite, right? Elite is a fan remake, but it's expandable. It's still single player, but it's expandable by the community. And I'm just trying to remember what the keys are. Right, so yes, it's cursor keys to fly. I haven't got the joystick set up. Now, with a bit of luck, between the planet and the sun should be the Tion Isla Orbital Graveyard. And this, I don't think, I've got to remember the keys for... can you tell me what the keys are, Dave?
I've not played it for about 5.
I'm trying. It's there we go. I've just moved this. I've just moved the game speed up. Right. Okay. We're now flying towards the sun, so I'm just going to angle it off because I think that's where the graveyard is. But I need to get out of range of the space station. So the graveyard is a fundamental piece of lore, I've always thought, that underpins the kind of structure of the Elite universe. It's a place where the lore sort of starts in terms of the myth and legend of the Dark Wheel and Raxler and all those kind of things, and yet it doesn't appear to exist in Elite Dangerous. It's kind of mentioned here and there, but it's not really. So what's your take on that? Because I'm pretty sure I remember early on that it was going to be added, and there were going to be all sorts of lore type things around this, but it never seems to have occurred.
I just think I think from Frontier's point of view, it was ancient history, and I think that was what everything from the original Elite was kind of pointed at being, was ancient history.
Yeah.
Don't know if there are any other issues behind that. I mean, there could be a couple of legal questions there. I don't know. It's not my job to go into that kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, we touched briefly on some of the legal wranglings in the past, but we don't want to go back there too much. But there have been problems in the past, right? For all sorts of reasons.
There have, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of questions over who owns what.
Yep.
And certain parties aren't going to let it die. So, just wonder if there are kind of some grounds for that. some of the stuff that gets said in terms of Elite and what the content should be and what it is and what the fans want and what the fans can't have seems to be a little bit shaky.
Yep.
Some of the stuff, who knows what Robert Holstock owns for a start? I mean,
Yes,
does
well,
he
that's
actually
right.
own some of the content? Does he retain copyright in the stuff that was in the books? Is there a third party somewhere else? Are there other questions around it? You know, there's a lot of stuff we need to think about. So I'm not going to go into that kind of argument at this
No,
point.
that's right. I mean, and Robert Holstock, of course, is very, very sadly has passed on. So that's never going to be changed. I had a lovely conversation with his wife actually a few years ago because I went to visited a memorial bench that's been set up in Kent, which isn't actually all that far away from where I live, and I had a nice time going to go there. Now, what you're seeing on screen, just for the benefit of everybody watching, this is. I don't know which version this is. Presumably this is a slightly later version of the stuff that you worked on, Dave. But we're now approaching the Tierney's Orbital Graveyard in Elite, and I can see thousands and thousands of things on the screen. They're all sort of floating past, and it's just a graveyard of ships and things. And so all this stuff is here, and I can see a crate patrolling the thing, which is exactly as described in the Dark Wheel, which is obviously the beauty of Elite in the sense that we could create anything we wanted to, that's what you've done, which I think is fantastic. You've brought it to life and put it in the game. But this, ironically, is the only.
I'm going to say that the design is still mine. I mean, a group of guys on the Elite forum took over developing this a long time after it just had anything to do with it, and they've done marvelous stuff.
They've done marvelous stuff.
I couldn't give you the names right at this minute, but go on there, have a look, and if you think it's worthy, then go on the Elite forums and give them a big thank you from us all.
Yeah. I mean, we do generally owe them a great debt because and I can't find how to slow the ship down. There we go. Right, I'm just going to turn around again because we were flying into the sun, so it was quite hard to see it because Elite now does this sort of lens flare effect. So now I'm flying back towards the graveyard so we can see it a little bit better. But this is what's on screen now is like it's a massive kind of semicircular collection of things, right, drifting in space, which is kind of what we always hope to see. So this is what we would like. Something like this is what we would like to have seen as the Tierney's Orbital Graveyard. And I think kudos to the Elite developers who took up what you started with, but many thanks to you for actually creating it for the first time and the only time actually ever, kind of in the Elite universe, even if unofficially. So I think that deserves a mention. I think a good round of applause for you in that regard for bringing this bit of the lore to life. So I'm quite glad to have been able to show it on the stream here. So this is the only instance of the Tierney's Orbital Graveyard that actually exists in an Elite type game. So thank you very much for creating it, Dave, in the first place. Do appreciate that.
A pleasure. I was happy to be involved with it. I mean, I think did it because I thought it needed to be there. And it needs to be here as well.
It does. It does. It's a shame that it's missing, I think. Somebody's now asking. Glenn's asking, why do the ships rust in space? Stop asking difficult questions, Glenn.
It's microorganisms.
That's what it is. Yes, that what he said.
Solar flare damage.
So anyway, so that was a little break into Elite. Now the only problem I've got now is I can't figure out how to get out of the game and get back to ED. Right, so back into ED. Here we are back in the Tierney's system in the same place, and it's not here. So this little bit of the lore has been is not present, and I suppose Frontier, I guess, always operates from a gameplay perspective, right? What gameplay could you associate with the graveyard? Maybe it was a decision that basically said, well, it's just another artifact, just another thing in the game that you go and visit once and then you've done it, and what gameplay can you run off it? But in my head,
you're the purple ass, back off! I'm trying to take a photo. Back,
man, back,
foul fiend.
But they've it isn't here, and it doesn't seem very likely that it's ever going to be there now.
There's no gameplay purpose for it. I think that's the issue.
You're probably right. Yeah, it's the gameplay issue, isn't it? Is at the end of the day, this is a game, and I mean, I can think of gameplay things that you could use it for as a starting point, maybe to pick up weird and wacky missions and stuff, maybe. But maybe that's too much.
There was a rumor a while ago they were going to start putting scrap salvage into it. Like there'd be ships you could use for scrap salvage.
Yeah.
That would have been perfect.
Yes.
But obviously, that hasn't happened either. So.
Yeah. So I mean, there were quite a lot of ambitions and things that you could have done around it, but it feels it's a big thing for me that feels like it kind of should have been there as almost like a love of the game. In the same way, when I first saw in the Kickstarter that they were, they're updating the Cobra, and do you remember when we first saw the Cobra on one of the videos for promoting the Kickstarter, and we all went yes, it's the Cobra again. We hadn't seen it for like goodness knows how many years. I thought they were going to add in bits and pieces like this from the original game as sort of flavour, because we knew the Thargoid would come back, and lots of the ship designs were there, and the Asp was there, and the Sidewinder was there, the Adder was there, and it felt like this was an important thing that should have been there as well.
Sorry, can I just stop you for a second? Person in the Imperial Courier number 93, can you please back off a little bit so I can take a photo?
Yeah, we need whoever that is. It's a very pretty red and white Imperial Courier.
It's a lovely ship. It's right in the way of my side view.
Trying to capture a picture. There we go. He's backing off. Yay! Thank you, whoever that was. That's brilliant. So one question I've been meaning to ask you: we've had Galcop, and that's the organisation that exists around the old world, and then we've also mentioned the word Far Colony, or the phrase, should I say, Far Colonies. Is that the same thing as the old world, or is that distinct?
I can't remember where I got that phrase from. Far Colonies was something. It was used somewhere to refer to what were the old world, and I think it was the original term for the old world region was the Far Colonies.
Okay, so that's what they maybe were called when they were settled, perhaps.
Yeah. I think it's something like that.
Yeah.
But again, I have no clue where it's came from.
Okay, well that's interesting. That's interesting because there's still a few unanswered questions in the lore just overall, yeah. Which is quite cool. Okay.
So in the red ship, if you want to move back to where you were now, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah,
I'll finish taking photos.
He's got his pickies. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go forward again. So we've heard about the graveyard. We've heard about the original lore of the game. We've heard about that something happened by the time of the second game to make everybody who was part of this area of space effectively a second-class citizen almost. They had to pay a fine to get out. So what's your rationale? What do you know about what happened to actually in the lore to Galcop itself as an organisation?
In the lore, Galcop itself fell apart because of political corruption. Now, there is a bit of side lore. I mean, it was written down. It is. Yep. This isn't the lore documentation. I'm going to say it, so you get a bit of an exclusive, and I might be breaking an NDA here. But given the fact that it simply
no, we'll find a little bit of time just to talk about what happened or what's happened to the lore in a bit. But yeah, carry on because it's interesting to know what happened to Galcop or what we think happened to Galcop, right?
Basically, one of the things was that the Federation and the Empire basically planted moles in the governmental structure of Galcop. Okay. So there was a ruling council of Galcop, very similar to what we've got the United Nations kind of idea. So every planet had its representative, and then there was the core Galcop leadership. So and it was managed as a company, as an organization. So that the head of Galcop was called the CEO. Okay. And it was very much listed as a commercialized thing. So it was essentially, with its roots being a trade organization, it basically grew into commercial interest, which is where they were based on profit.
Yeah.
And obviously there was a big kind of drive towards expansion to try and improve Galcop's chances against the Federation and the Empire, and they eventually ended up in a propaganda war. So they had to try and make sure that Galcop was coming out as the big cheese in front of everything else. So they started banding about all this information about being a huge organization and being across the entire galaxy, being 2,000 member worlds and all that.
Yeah.
And they found essential proof of that. And obviously the people flying for Galcop in their ships were kind of seeing all this because there's stations, there's planets, there's rules in place saying you're not allowed to go to the planet because they have their own ecosystem and you could introduce something foreign, so you're not allowed to go down to the planet or anything like that.
Which was the rationale for why we didn't have planet landings in the original game, yeah, because obviously the technology wasn't up to it, but yeah, it's a nice lore explanation for why, yeah.
was one of the headcanon things that I was allowed to put into the actual lore, which I was quite impressed with.
Okay, cool.
And essentially, the story goes that at some point, inevitably, someone found out about all this, and basically what had happened was they had planted fake domes, so empty
Okay.
domes with lights, fake stories about who lived there, just a load of fake news and propaganda and lights and shadows and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And this was all found out, and so basically that ended up highlighting all the corruption. The few hundred member worlds that Galcop actually had that were legitimate worlds essentially said we're not having any of this. There was a huge investigation both internally and externally. The government of Lave got involved, and basically tore everything down. And there was a big investigation kind of internally that dragged it all through the mud. And then by the start of the 3170s, all the investigations had pointed out that they were corrupt as hell.
Right.
And they'd basically told loads and loads of lies. And every member world, other than the core that used to be the Old Worlds Alliance, coalition, that's the word.
Coalition.
The Old
Yeah.
Worlds Coalition, essentially said, "Nah, we don't want anything to do with you."
So that's the end of Galcop. It falls due to political interference and corruption.
Yeah. So essentially, the side story of it, if you like, is that the Federation and the Empire kind of had a hand in exposing that.
Yeah.
Or even hand right in the background in the early days of actually causing that to happen, or suggesting that kind of thing was going on.
Okay.
Or suggesting that kind of thing could happen.
Yeah. And that's sort of in the game in the sense that there's bits of history lying about in some of the POIs and things, aren't there?
The POIs and some of the old Galnet posts.
Yeah.
Do touch on some of this stuff, interestingly enough.
Okay,
and there's about three different versions of what happened.
Which I suppose is kind of good, isn't it? Because the in-game sources will necessarily be slightly, not necessarily definitive, yeah, because
That's an interest.
They're news articles that are written by the winners, I suppose.
I mean, I think I don't know which way to jump on that in terms of the real world reasons for all this discrepancy. I mean, is it because Frontier really hasn't kept track? Is it because they themselves kind of flipped back and forth between what's going on? Or is it a very cunning ruse to say, well, you know what, there are discrepancies in the background history from all these different places. Does that point towards it actually being lies?
Yes.
They mean that cunning? Am I not giving them the credit they due?
Maybe. I mean, it could be, right? It could be very clever. I suspect it probably isn't. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt, shall we? Because that's quite interesting. So, I mean, one other comment that came off the back of talking about the various different hyperspace technologies last week was that in the kind of Galcop era, 3125, where the original game is set, we've got a fast, effective hyperdrive that gets you across space really, really quickly. With the Curium technology, which seems to get kind of lost. So did we lose a whole bunch of technology? Because we've talked about things in the original game like galactic hyperspace and stuff, all technologies which no longer exist in certainly in the second and third Elite games and don't really exist in AD, right? And the hyperspace travel times in the second and third game are like days long because of the way the game is structured. And we have inter-system jump drives in the original game, and we don't have those in the second and third games. And they seem very similar to the technology that we have kind of in the frameshift drive by Time of Elite Dangerous. So is there a sense that Galcop actually had superior technology to the Empire and the Federation? And maybe that was why they decided to do some sort of kind of political, economic destruction of them rather than take them on in a fair fight, which they might have lost?
Yeah. Some of this is kind of canon stuff, and some of it isn't. And there's no distinction between what has been accepted in the documentation for the lore, and what's still there, what's going on there. So I'm not gonna tread carefully. I'm just gonna say what I think the situation is.
Okay, cool. Yep.
That truth within that there could be some actual lore stuff, and within it there could be absolute headcanon. So feel free to interpret this as you like, guys. And Commander Cold Tsar, that is a lovely ship. That is beautiful. It's fucking close, but it's beautiful. Right, so Galcop definitely had technology that was way ahead of what the Federation and Empire have. The Federation and Empire at that point in time were very much functioning in the same way that they did in Frontier and First Encounters. So that has been consistent since the start of space travel. That is the hyperdrive system and hyperspace system that humanity had invented and used. What Galcop had They developed on their own with the help of Sirius. The Sirius Corporation was essentially based in the Galcop space,
Right. Okay.
and assisted with Falcon de Lacy's domination of the market as well. So they were kind of in cahoots with each other. And what basically was going on was the Thargoid War started in 2690 something, I believe. Obviously, ended up with quite a lot of wreckage and debris and technological bits and pieces that you could grab a hold of and try and analyze. And over the years, I think, no, this is not legitimately canon. Cough, cough.
Yeah.
It's my firm belief that historically what Galcop has done is reverse engineered Thargoid technology.
Right.
That's what
Okay.
Sirius has used to develop the hyperspace system and the jump drive and the much faster hyperdrive system that they were using back in the 31st or 30th century.
Yep.
32nd century, sorry.
Because we've seen with the Thargoids in ED that they don't appear to use, the inter-system frame shift drive. They just appear to be able to hyperspace to wherever they want to go to at any time they wish to. They seem to have a much more comprehensive mastery of hyperspace than we do, because we just use it as a kind of point-to-point transfer system. We've got no control of our ship whilst you're travelling through hyperspace, but they seem to be able to do a lot more sophisticated stuff, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I think, or that person with the red ship's getting a bit close again. Feel very
it's really we've got a little. Well, I think there's a Guardian fighter hanging off the left hand side as well, or at least on my screen on the left hand side.
Does anybody want to take position top and bottom as well, just so we can
get as many people together? Yeah. So go on. So I interrupted you. So Thargoids and reverse engineering technology in Galcop. That sounds all very exciting. So what's going on there, do you think?
So yes, I think what Sirius have obviously done all that kind of stuff, pushed it all out. Falcon de Lacy has been on it because they've obviously incorporated that technology into the main ships of the day.
Yep.
And then obviously that's been used up until the fall of the Galcop, and then basically everybody went back to using original humanity's version of hyperdrives. That I believe is because essentially once Galcop fell, people in charge of releasing and developing those technologies essentially blew it all up to hell so that nobody could copy it.
Right.
And essentially that's what the Federation and Empire were actually after, was the secrets of this hyperdrive to gain more power.
Okay.
And they didn't get it.
They didn't get it.
They were denied that. And then basically they've had to piece it all together again from what was left in the wreckage of all these facilities that are dotted around the core systems. Jesus Christ, it's just got down.
Which maybe explains why the frame shift drive suddenly is a complete revelation when it appears in the year 3290 or whenever it was invented.
That's basically this, what's the reconstructed Sirius from the wreck of what was Sirius in the Galcop era. It's also why Galcop was being maligned and why everyone was saying that Galcop was nothing. They just wanted to completely suppress anything that would suggest that Galcop had better facilities or better tech, based on what they've had these stuff based on. And it's taken until 3290 to reverse engineer it all again and get it back in.
Okay, so we almost had a technological regression as a result. So that explains the different hyperspace technologies that we see in the different games and rationalises them into the lore. But also gives you the idea that it's it's all skullduggery on behalf of the Federation and the Empire that's engineered the demise of another organisation in space, and then ultimately tried to steal their technology, not succeeded, and then ultimately had to wait many decades in order to get that technology back again, which is where we now find ourselves in ED.
I would say these thoughts and opinions are those of the individuals themselves, not the organisations being.
And no fictional characters were harmed in the making of them. Exactly right. Okay, well that's interesting. So that kind of brings us up to where Elite Dangerous sort of starts, right? So we end up and we've got lots of gameplay additions like power play and wings and all that sort of stuff that's been chucked into the game. But what's your take on the lore since the game came out? Because obviously we've got the Federation, the Empire, and the Alliance doing their things. What's your take on the lore as it's kind of expanded from where the game started?
Hang on a second. I'm going to take a photograph of what everything outside this ship looks like at the moment, because oh my god!
There's a beautiful purple asp. I don't know whose that is, but it's just a lovely colour. My wife would like that. She loves purple.
That Imperial ship, that big silver one at the side, is
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
that's a cutter, isn't it? Yeah, it's enormous. I think it's a cutter. It's upside down for me at the moment. I suppose I could roll the ship around or roll my camera around. There we go. There's an adder there. Looks like a DBX. Lovely asp. I love the asp. There's a Cobra, another courier, and there are all these tourist vessels hanging around as well, which is quite cool. So yeah. So yeah, so elite, and the for the. I mean, it's been around for 6 years now, hasn't it? So what's your take on how it's gone since? Given you created a lot of the original lore and got it into the game as it starts. What do you think about it now?
In terms of lore, I'm a little disappointed. I think there was a lot of potential.
Yep.
You know this. You know where I'm going to go. And this
I do. I'm sort of setting you up here a little bit. I apologise.
For those audience who are not aware, whenever I start off a rant about something, Drew comes running from miles around to try and watch. It's fun, apparently.
We've sat through many conventions and just and drank beer and had rants, haven't we? But
pretty much, yeah. I've had people on streams of mine actually run away to tell Drew that I'm having a rant, and he'll run from wherever he is in his house and come to listen.
Come and listen. Yeah. But that's we could be really negative at this point, couldn't we? But we won't, because we love this game, and we've loved this game since we were kids, and it's been a part of our lives. It is a part of our lives. It probably almost certainly always will be a part of our lives. I'm sure there'll be an elite crest or something on my tombstone. Right on, Commander, or something, and any criticism we do chuck at this is only because we're just utterly passionate about elite as a space thing, but I agree, the lore is patchy, right, and we've suffered retcons and all sorts of things, so anyway, so I'm putting words in your mouth, so you rant on.
See, Drew, you can tell you're a storyteller. You ask someone to tell a story, then you tell it for them. No, I'm very angry at Frontier about what they've done to this game. This game could have been very, very, very special in terms of how it could have developed, how it could have evolved, and they have seriously, seriously dropped the ball. And I'm going to say this with absolutely no shame or no fear of recrimination. These are my opinions, not the opinions of the person that runs this channel. I'm saying that in a serious aspect.
Yeah.
Over the years, we've had so many conversations, me and Drew, me and Frontier even, about where the storylines in this game could go, where the plot lines could take us, what the capacity for good storytelling is in this game. They basically got free work out of 9 authors, 13 authors.
Yeah, I guess so.
Over the space of 18 months. And those people, well, a good few of those people, myself and Drew included, were more than happy to contribute content for storytelling to this game for nothing.
Yep.
No input with no reward, just maybe a little bit of credit somewhere on page somewhere that says some of the story stuff was written by these guys. They completely declined, and they left it in the hands of 1 or 2 people who basically were snowed under with work and couldn't actually put together a coherent storyline.
Yep. I mean, harsh but fair, I think. Yep.
They brought in this whole power play concept as a political thing and as a kind of as a game mechanic, and it had so much potential even there as well to have some fleshed out characters, but that went nowhere again. It's a mechanic that is so clunky and horrible and pointless that the one key thing they could have got out with it was these people could have had stories behind them and stories that could have developed with them in there. They started it with the Federation woman who got kidnapped by aliens. Let's put it the way that everyone thought.
Halsey?
I think so, something like that. Yeah. And she was taken off to them, and then that story just fizzled out.
Yep.
That to me, that was the point where I thought, okay, I'm going to give power play a chance in terms of the lore, but not in terms of that game mechanic because it's shite. Sorry, language. But and the fact it dragged me on. I kept up with that, and I was reading through just trying to find those stories about Halsey, and then it stopped.
Yeah.
Then it just fizzled away into nothing. And after a year of nothing else being said, I was like, what the hell? And this is what's happened with all the background story in this game. It's now nothing. It's an empty galaxy.
We had the arguments between Senator Patrius, whatever it's pronounced, the blue-haired girl. What was her name? Ashling. It was sort of it was a little bit Game of Thrones in space, but it was, it was a story. You could kind of read it and go, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. There was at least something there, yeah.
There was something. I mean, there was something that was brewing. There was the whole storyline with the Emperor and the Empress and all that
right.
kind of.
And Arissa getting the throne, and
and it's just you've got all this development that was then starting to happen, but again, it was pushed back into two-dimensional character territory, and then the Thargoid stuff started to come in, and then everything just faded away, and everything focused on the Thargoid stuff.
Yeah.
And the Thargoid stuff started to drag and drag and drag. And then you've got this whole thing where the only time you're ever going to get any movement in any kind of plot lines was every time an update was coming. It was a major update. It wasn't even they were just doing little bits and pieces of updates. And for an online game that's multiplayer, that is basically empty, you can't land on planets, you can't do anything with atmospheric stuff, you can't get out your ship and walk around.
Yeah.
There's no people anywhere apart from inside ships. It's so impersonal, it's unbelievable. But for a multiplayer, community-based online game, to have zero content in terms of storylines and zero content in terms of moving stuff along, and then zero content to roll plot lines along without having a major update to the game needing to be done. So everything's manually driven. There's no automation. There's no easy way to patch in things like expansions or modifications the way that you can with Elite.
Yeah. I was literally thinking that this afternoon when I was thinking how do we talk about this in a at least vaguely constructive way. And I was thinking with Elite, I mean, all you need to do with Elite in order to add a mission to the game is learn a little bit of JavaScript, and then you have to package it up in a certain way in a few folders. But it's I was able to do it, and I am not a techie, okay? So I was able to write a mission for Elite and have it in game, and then fly out into space, and then my mission would trigger based on some preconceived ideas of, what I thought was right, and then it would lead you through, go to these places, find this clue, come back, and you've won. It was simple, but I was able to write a mission in computer code, and I was really proud of myself. And you think if a fan-made game can provide a robust mechanism for doing that, why can't this one?
Well, that was it. They wanted to retain so much control over everything. And I think this is what's coming down from Mr. Braben.
Yeah.
Is that he wants control over every aspect of the Elite universe. He wants to own this, keep it in a little box in his desk and call it George.
Yeah.
It's his baby.
George.
I apologise to Ian Bell if he's listening to this.
Yep.
But basically that's what Mr. Braben wants.
Okay.
He wants to this completely. He's not willing to let the reins out to anybody else, let anyone else have any storytelling privileges within this universe without his explicit reading of every single word. And that's why it's not going to happen. But the problem is that's what's crippling this game. Yeah.
Because it's a multiplayer game, right? So players should be able to do things.
I will finish a sentence.
Sorry, Phil. I'm excited. It's good. Keep going. Sorry. I shall shut up.
Storyteller is back. No, I mean, in comparison to games like Star Trek Online or the Star Wars Galaxies when it was around, or even things like EverQuest, if Online even are doing it better. Bloody Star Citizen's doing it better.
Yep.
Just saying something. It's not even a game yet.
Yep.
No Man's Sky. You want plot lines and stories coming out your bottom? Look at No Man's Sky. And I must admit, in terms of gameplay and actually immersive content and storytelling, No Man's Sky is leaps and bounds ahead of this game. And it's a young game. And look at how rubbish it was when it first came out.
I mean, they were in an awful place, weren't they? No Man's Sky when it first came out. Yeah.
They were slammed to the ground. I thought they'd never get back up again. I thought it was dead.
Yeah.
They've turned it around in no uncertain terms, and now it is an amazing game to play. It's so immersive. It's so deep. Okay, the characterization could be a little bit better for some of the kind of two-dimensional aliens and so on. But still, it's got the content. What we've got in this game is an absolutely beautiful universe, an absolutely gorgeous to look at ships, photorealistic graphics, and I mean, I'm wearing a headset, an Oculus headset right now, and I'm looking at all these ships that are parked around me, really making me feel claustrophobic, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to look at, and the good things about it, the flight model I think is very clever, given that it's kind of trying to combine the original game and some of the 6 degrees of freedom stuff that you would have in real space. The sounds are amazing, aren't they? Like you say, the scale of the galaxy is incredible. The ships look stunning, and yet
visually it is the most immersive game I've ever played.
Yep.
And it's still, and I'll say that till the day I die.
Yep. And
I've come into James written on my gravestone, but that's as far as it goes. It's all style and it's no substance. And they've had so many chances to improve that, make that better, and they've dropped the ball every single time. You get a major update coming out, it seems geared towards making it more into a kind of crafting or base-related game or base-building kind of thing, rather than actually making it an immersive universe to play in. Populating the universe with people, stories, and things to make it personal is going to be a much, much more profitable thing to do with this game and keep people playing it.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder, are they that bothered anymore?
Well, who knows, right? Who knows what's going on inside the echelons of the company?
That's
But
a very hypothetical aspect.
I think you're right in the sense that, to me, it's a canvas upon which great stories could be told and great adventures could have happened. And there's a few comments in the chat which is basically about that players want to be able to make a difference. They want to leave their mark upon a game universe. And base building is maybe kind of a way of doing that. But if there's a political thing happening or there's a major conflict happening between two powers in the universe, players want to jump in and make a difference. And I think that's the thing that's never really been allowed to occur in the game.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that touches on something that's happened very recently. And I think Scolio the Most, or Steve Berkel, whatever his name is, on this game, is probably somewhere in chat or somewhere in game.
He may be here. I haven't looked, but he may be here yet.
A big shout out to him, and a big bunch of kudos for him, because that guy almost got me back in love with this game again.
Right.
Because there was a whole argument about why my organisation, the Teen Isla Historical Society, was not in Teen Isla.
Yep.
And bless him and his crew, they actually decided to try and get us into Teen Isla and get a foothold here.
Okay. So what, by playing the background simulation of the game to move the faction around? Yep.
By playing the BGS and getting some alliances with other factions, other player factions, and actually getting a lot of help to do it. And they got the backing. And the guys did a fantastic job getting as far as they got. But the background simulation itself actually stopped them from doing it. Now, we don't know at the minute if it was just the BGS itself or if it was something that Frontier specifically said, no, we're not letting this happen.
Right.
It's very, very suspicious, the fact that everything else was fine. Every system around Teen Isla that could get a foothold in and try to get into Teen Isla, and it just basically won't go above a certain percentage. It was horrible. It was terrible. And it was really demoralising.
I can imagine, because you're trying to use the game. You're trying to play the game. If the game won't let you do something that arguably you should be able to do,
exactly.
Yeah, that's not happy.
There is that paranoid part of me that says, is it because it's me? Is it because it's something to do with my faction? But it was so specific. I mean, it was so easy to get everything. Well, I say easy. It wasn't easy. It was relatively easy to get everything else put in place. But to get that far, and then for the game itself to say, no, you can't have this.
Yep.
At that point, that was when I said, this game is actually, in some ways, fundamentally flawed. Is it because Teen Isla is one of those protected systems in Frontier's canon that they've got something in mind for it that needs to be used on, so they're not going to let anything change here on a player basis? Yeah. It makes the whole thing about players can affect the game in any way they want. Players can affect how things work in certain areas of the game. That's a lie. You can't, because something's stopping you from doing that.
It's like the universe is curated by some ethereal godlike hand somewhere. Yeah. I mean, we've seen that in other places with permit locks, so various parts of the galaxy get lopped off. The Col 70 sector is a good one. There's even there's a moon, I think, in Lave, actually. We should have checked it while we were there, but there's a permit locked planet in the Lave system, which I don't think you can get to, and there doesn't seem to be any way to earn the permit.
I mean, in all the lore, Lave is a system of one planet, one star.
Yep.
And in Alan Stroud's book, I think it's described as being one planet, one star. It might not be. But I think in all the lore documentation,
well, I wouldn't have thought Alan would have made a mistake like that. He knew Elite, really well, right? Yeah, he wouldn't have done. He knew it was one planet, one star. So I haven't read that book for a long time, but I'd be surprised if he made mention of other things. I don't know if he did or not.
I had a lore thing in my head about what Lave 2 actually was and why it was locked.
Yep.
Because I think that's Raxler.
Ooh. Maybe it is. Well, oddly enough, I think I in one of my fan fiction books, I think I made that up as a place where Raxler could be, because I thought, well, why not hide it in plain sight in the middle of the core world? But yeah, that's for anybody going, oh, it's Raxler. No, it's definitely not. Or at least it probably isn't, because I just did that long time before Elite Dangerous was a thing. But I riffed on that as an idea. But that permit has been there for a long time. It just, again, it's just stuck, isn't it? It doesn't seem that you can do anything about it.
And they've not said anything about it. I mean,
No.
that's a core system that all the old-time gamers and all the Ultimate Elite fans are familiar with. They've done something fundamentally different to it and then locked it away. That's a plot point. There's something there that they were intending to expand on. And to have gone 6 years now without even saying anything about it and not even coming anywhere near to something to do with that tells me that, there's a lot of lore stuff dotted around the galaxy that they've put in place for future reference that might never ever be seen.
May never be
because
seen.
they've changed so much.
Phoenix Defier has said in chat that it's not Rax. Lave 2 was set aside for Lave Revolution 2, which will in brackets, which will never happen. Which presumably is a potentially planned second book by Alan Stroud, which I think he originally set out to do a trilogy, but he's only got the one book. So who knows, right? We don't know. But yeah, I mean, and we commented actually another little discrepancy we found a few weeks ago was that the two moons of Mars have mysteriously disappeared between Game 3, Frontier First Encounters, in which they do exist, and Elite Dangerous, in which they don't. They're just not there. So Mars has lost its two moons for reasons, and we did ask Frontier slightly jokingly on Twitter for an explanation, but they never answered. Which seems to be a theme, really, is that Frontier's quite happy to engage with features of the game, but they never. I mean, for the last 3 years plus now, they've never engaged, to my knowledge, with anybody who's talking about the lore anymore. They used to. I mean, Michael Brooks certainly used to come on streams and was interviewed by DJ Truths there a couple of times, as I recall. They used to do lore type videos and sorts of things. They just don't anymore. So it seems to have stopped. And then obviously in the last few months, then CG's interstellar initiatives and Galnet itself have just stopped. So it's almost like not only is the lore interest in the actual background lore gone, but there is no new stuff happening either.
Yeah. That's the problem, isn't it?
So
it's,
I don't know where it leaves us. It leaves us with this amazing game in which we're always looking backwards now, almost like the glory days are kind of past, which seems a very sad thing to be doing for what is still an amazing looking thing. But everyone's now looking back at all the cool stuff that used to happen.
That's it. I mean, the death of the lore is obviously one of the main reasons why you're doing this lore tour, and I think it's a very visceral thing for me.
Yeah.
I'm by heart, by my very kind of core, I'm a storyteller. I'm just not that good at it. I
disagree. I fundamentally disagree.
I can tell a good story. Just trying to give it to write it down is not a great idea. But yeah, it seems that there's so much potential here. I mean, to bring it back to where we are, the old world itself, the history of this area.
Yep.
One of the earliest main colonies, one of the most successful old colonies that has a history, a very checkered history.
Yeah.
Was it destroyed from the inside? Was that all covered up? Was something else happen?
And you could write a sort of detective mystery type set of missions, couldn't you? That would allow the players to go and investigate what happened and maybe piece together, interesting little clues as to actually know what we're being told in the official truth isn't actually what happened. And you can imagine a mission around, go to the TNS system, but go undercover and don't get spotted by these guys and stuff like that. Yeah.
There are 150,000 words, 100,000 of which were cut from the RPG and 50,000 which were written separately.
Yeah.
That was actually an entire thread of content that went through the RPGs.
Yeah. So you actually wrote a sort of expansion of that possible story.
True. Let me finish this sentence because it's important. That went through the entire RPG. That was essentially a thread that went into exactly this story. What happened to Galcop? Why did Galcop fall? What happened in the background?
Yep.
And obviously it introduce a whole lot of concepts that would stretch to the 150 years between. There was a mission called Memory of Ossis, which is the name of this. That's why it's called this. That's why it's called Memory of Ossis, which essentially was a mission to planet Ossis, which was destroyed in one of my fan fiction stories by a Thargoid invasion. Okay. And it would be the return to that planet in this era by a group of pilots who would uncover many, many secrets about what actually happened back then.
Yep.
That was all. That was when the content that was related to that was cut, I kind of put a kibosh on that project. So I've still got that draft, and it was going to be brought out as a separate add-on for the RPG that would be free, called The Lost Missions, and it may not happen because I've lost so much passion for this particular aspect of the game because there's no support for it anymore.
And that's the killer, isn't it? I mean, Bad Micah has just given us a question actually on the chat, which is, I can't think of anyone who would disagree that there should be more stories, more lore. And he's asking, would you want Frontier to be generating it, or do you think there should be a way for the community, i.e. us, to generate content?
I think the community for this game is why this game exists.
Yeah, the community is a special thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very special. It's a thing that's held this group together. I mean, the people that are hanging around us now, each and every of those ships that's impinging on my personal space, is an example of why this game exists.
Yep.
Fleet, Frontier, First Encounters all gendered this kind of support and this kind of following, and the passion for that went into this game from the start. And the community setting up things like functions and conventions and all that kind of stuff, and getting together in places and dressing up funny and all doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The people that we've dragged into this with us, even our families are into this kind of thing now.
They've had no choice, have they?
It's the best friendly community that I've seen in any game. Yeah. It's very rarely toxic. It's very rarely abusive. It's always supportive, and it's you guys that hold this stuff together. It's you guys that mean that we're here doing this stuff now. And for that, I thank you for one, because you've kept me in this passion for 5 years.
And sane, or at least a level of sane.
So that, I think, very, very strongly, and I would stand in the front of Frontier's yard with a big placard saying this, that community-based content is essential to this game.
Yep.
It's a kick in the teeth.
It's the lifeblood.
To have this amount of expandability and this amount of ability hanging around, basically crying because we can't get the right content into this game. Community, we've seen with Elite that the community can do amazing things. You give somebody a keyboard and a mouse and some drawn paper, and you can have missions, you can have ships, you can have whole stories coming into this thing, and they won't let us do it, and that's criminal. If they don't want to let us do it, then do it themselves. They don't want to do it.
That's the frustration, isn't it? Because I can sort of understand a bit that there's IP control and things like that for for content. But if the community's always saying we want content, we want stories, we want missions, we want exciting things to do in this universe, and they won't let us create it, even though we could, then it is beholden to them to do it.
Yes, they hold the keys. They are the doorkeeper. They are the gatekeepers. They need to be doing this stuff. If they're going to do it, do it. Man up, or spine. But sort out your life choices.
Yep.
If you're not going to do it, then get a developer guy on there to open up the interface, open up an API, and let us do it.
Yeah, and it could be done. I mean, maybe the way they've architected the game has blatted them into a corner. Who knows, right? We don't know. But there are there's an awful lot of people on the chat who are basically just agreeing, and people are saying that there is an awful lot of passion out there, and there's an awful lot of ability out there. It's certainly not just the Drew and Dave show in terms of generating content, right? We've been fans for a long time, but there are lots of people who've come to the game since who know the game really well and who are very creative and who could generate all sorts of amazing stuff. But if there's no way to embed anything into the game in a meaningful way, all you've got is kind of social gatherings in the game, isn't it? Like a bit like what we've got on the screen now. We can all meet up and go, yeah, isn't it great? But we can't actually do anything.
It's a platform for role playing. I'll give it that. I mean, the paper RPG that I did obviously is a gateway for storytelling in the real world, if you like.
Yep.
But the fact that we have an online game where we can all get together like this and basically be up each other's bum.
Yeah.
If that explorer gets any closer to that little guardian ship, there's going to be babies resulting from this. Seriously. Not waggling your wings at me. That's just cheeky. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, what you can do in game, and I've seen people do it, is you can take on a role in game. You can wing up, you can gather together, you can go up and do a story with somebody narrating that story or whatever else. You can do all that kind of thing. But that's very, very surface level.
Yep.
It needs to have some kind of depth. And as a developer, I understand the fact that they have interfaces in to be able to do updates. They have the capacity to put content into the game. That means anything that they can do, they can release that ability to other people.
Yeah, and there'd have to be controls around it, and there'd have to be NDAs and all that sort of stuff. But that's detail, right? It's stuff that would have to be worked through, but it can be done.
Submit your content to an FTP site. They can review it if they want to review it, and all they have to do then is just add it to the next update, and it's done. It's not difficult.
Yeah,
it's not hard work.
Yeah,
and it's going to be good. I don't know. I can wax lyrical about this all night. I'm not going to repeat myself again. But yeah, it should be done.
But it's possible, but it's not. And this is they don't want to do it. There's no other explanation other than that somebody somewhere, maybe it's David Braben, maybe it's somebody else, but somebody somewhere is basically saying,
"No, maybe about it. It's in David's hands."
Yep. This is not to happen.
It's going to happen, but if he doesn't want to do it, it'll never happen.
Yep.
And I don't think he'll do it. He likes to control this game too much.
Yep.
It's baby. You can see his point.
It's his. I suppose if we take Ian Bell out of the equation for a moment, Elite Dangerous, and I'm using the word dangerous there very specifically rather than just elite, is David Braben's baby, isn't it? He did create it. I suppose it's entirely not unreasonable that he gets to choose where it goes. It's kind of George Lucas and Star Wars almost, isn't it? But
understood.
The probably yet the thing that I don't feel necessarily that Frontier or maybe David Braben has appreciated entirely yet, even now, is that this game has had a fundamental impact on generations of people, and they want to commute. They want to contribute. They want to be within it. They want to collaborate. They want to extend it. They want to make it better. They don't want to do that for monetary gain. They just love this thing. They're passionate about it. Yeah.
I mean, there's people probably in this group around us who have got the same, if not more, passion about this game than David Braben does.
Yeah. We haven't seen him for years, actually. At least not in an elite context.
That's because they've shut him down. They have to shut him down. Batteries ran out. Run out of jumpers.
Run out of jumpers. Oh dear. So I mean, obviously there's speculation about this next era or new era or whatever it's called. I mean, and we sort of get the impression it's space legs and base building and stuff. I mean, I must admit, you sound a bit more excited about that than me, actually. I'm kind of very kind of like, well, I've seen FPS games before. That's not really my bag. I like spaceships and I like going off and exploring space. So I'd much rather have atmospheric landings and cool things to go and investigate. But are you looking forward to the new era at the end of this year or early next year? Or are you sort of almost done with the game?
I'll be honest. At the moment, in terms of fanaticism I've shown about this genre for the last 30 years, the last couple of years have killed it.
Yeah.
Been so, not within the community, but from the developer side and from the game content side and from some of the interactions I've had with certain elements of the development side, shall we say, it's been very negative. It's been very unfulfilling. I'm not saying I'm entitled to anything like that or anything else, but some of the engagement that I've had has been very, very lacking. Some of the things I've heard from third parties that are fairly accurate and have been proven to be accurate have been very disheartening about where this game is going to go. I'm cautiously optimistic about the fact that we'll get space legs and atmospheric landings, and I will casually play this game now and again. Because I bought an Oculus Rift for it, so I'm going to play it.
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful in Oculus as well, isn't it? It's another level beyond then. Yeah.
No matter what else happens with this, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the whole fleet carriers concept. I think that's more base building crap that we don't need.
I haven't got enough money anyway.
Well, that's it. It's all high-end billions of pound stuff because they're expecting every player to have got that amount of money and be able to take part in all that stuff.
Yep.
But again, it's all more content just to keep the people that are playing it every single day happy. There's nothing there to keep variety coming for people who are either casual gamers, Mobius forum dads, people who can't give 24/7 to a game like this, and who play it maybe once a week or once a month when they've got time from the wife. there's nothing to cater for that, and you have to cater for all the different genres of people, all the different demographics of the people playing your game.
Yep. There's got to be something for everybody, right? That would be
It's fundamental. That's right. I mean, No Man's Sky's got this right in spades because they give updates for every level of play. Every single time they do an update is for every level of play that will benefit for it, and that doesn't happen in this game. You get some tweaks and fixes for the general players, but then you get all this great amount of content like fleet carriers and really expensive ships and really expensive upgrades, or really work intensive like grind stuff that you've got to get.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't have the time to do that. I mean, I'm speaking for myself as well. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way. I know there's a lot of people on the social.
Yeah, I've invested time in doing things like the Guardians on because I wanted to get a exploration ship that could jump like stupid jump ranges and stuff. So I've gone and done some of that, and some of that stuff's actually quite good. But it is still a bit grindy.
It's very time consuming. That's it. If you've got 2 hours a week to play a game,
yeah,
you've got so many other things on, then you're not going to get that stuff.
It's
if you
quite hard work.
You have to drive around on planet surface all the time and get motion sick. You're not going to get it.
Yeah, there is that problem as well.
That's why I haven't done the Guardian missions, because every time I step into an SRV, I start to vomit. So I have to play it without the headset on. I will say that I do have.
Well, I think VR in the SRV is a bit problematic. Regardless, I think a lot of people have reported that, particularly if you fall off the edge of a rock or something, everything starts spinning around.
It's when you bounce, because you've got no stability on low gravity worlds.
Yeah.
And you bounce, and as soon as you start to bounce and rock from side to side, it's like, what? There's my dinner. I found no blue stones, but I found lots and lots of little green puddles.
So I suppose we're going to have to just wait and see what the new era brings. I mean, which is always the way. I mean, I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic about it, but and this lore tour is really about celebrating what happened before rather than inventing anything new, because there's no way to invent anything new. There's nothing to talk about because there is no Galnet anymore, and there is no CGs, and there is only what the players are doing in the universe, and they can't change very much. So the lore tour, the idea behind it is really just to sort of celebrate the story of the game up until now, and then maybe there'll be some more at some point we could do another lore tour about, but right now there isn't, so we're going to have to just wait, I suppose.
Well, there's a 10-year plan, isn't there? We're coming to year 6 of the 10-year plan. And obviously, if everything is kind of stalled lore-wise, the main storyline with the Fargods is still kind of crawling along at a snail's pace.
Yeah.
And realistically, slow snail's pace in terms of how the game universe is meant to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a shame that people like people like you and me who've poured a lot of time and energy, and lots of other players have as well. We're not unique by any stretch of the imagination, but if we are lifelong fans, which we are, and we're beginning to feel a little bit jaded, not because there's anything actually wrong with the game per se, although there's obviously things you could improve about it and there's bugs and things like that, but because it feels like opportunities are being missed. There's potential here that's not exploited. There's we can sort of imagine a version of Elite Dangerous not very dissimilar from what we're seeing, but which is filled with lots of other compelling stuff, which isn't new ships, it isn't new capabilities, it's just using what's already there to tell more interesting stuff.
So Explorer just rammed straight in the front of us, I think. I suddenly moved quite a long way with the line.
Yeah, we get bashed about. Yep.
But no, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, the lore itself is why I started playing this game. The lore of any game is what keeps my imagination going, and it makes me want to get involved in the immersive part of playing games, and I do enjoy that. I mean, I suppose if we don't get any more new lore, I think my end game for this game has always been the same thing. I will reach the pinnacle of my happiness with this universe when I can achieve the thing I wanted to do from the very first moment I came out of hyperspace and looked at a planet.
Yep.
I land my ship on a planet with an atmosphere by a lake, get out of that ship, sit on the beach, and look at the sunset.
Yeah, it's very similar to what I want to do. So I think if I could land my Cobra Mark III on a nice beach, and we'll have a barbecue, right? That's what we need to be able to have. So just you and me in a couple of deck chairs with 2 Cobra Mark IIIs on a nice beach with the sun going down. Then that's game over, right?
That's it. That's it. That's everything done.
Well, that's probably quite a good place to end the stream. So shall we? Shall we fly off into the sunset?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's
So,
video this. It's gonna be
yeah, let's I'm gonna get you're in front of me. Let's just fly towards the let's just fly towards the sun.
directly behind.
It's directly behind me, is it? Right. I'm just gonna yaw around then in that case. Oh, my game's lagging quite a bit.
It's because people are all up in your.
There we go. So, the start's quite a long way off. Right, there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to full throttle, which I don't think my ship is particularly fast. So I won't go to full throttle. I'll go to about 2/3, so that should allow all ships to.
Bloody purple asp.
That should allow all ships to keep pace. So then I'm going to go to the external camera and zoom out. So everybody form up. We'll do one last shot. There we go. See if you can get in formation with my Cobra, which should be heading towards the star.
On your right wing.
There we go. Where are you?
On your right wing.
I can't see you at the moment.
Just a little behind you.
I'm quite a long way out. Oh, there you go. Yep. Okay. There we go. So, there we go. I can see there's 3 ships now. A couple of Cobras. There we go. There's a DBX. There's the cutter. We're all there. We're all flying off. Trying to get in the shot. There we go. It's looking good. There we go. Everybody try and line up with that angle. There we go. You're my right hand. You're my right hand man there, Dave. That's excellent. Flying off into the sunset, which is probably a good place to. Slightly poetic, maybe. Slightly self-indulgent way of ending the stream, but hey, why not, right? And it's quite nice. So maybe we'll be back, right? Maybe we'll be back in the new era with new lore and new stories. But until then, we've had a fantastic run from 84 up until now with the lore that we've had. We've had all sorts of fun and games about discussing the origins of this and the origins of that. It's been many decades of good fun. So hopefully that will continue in all sorts of ways, and we'll continue talking about this. But huge thanks for coming on stream, Dave. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. And fantastic to hear the original, contributions to the lore that you made, and the fact that your work. The fan work that you did in all those intervening years was ultimately recognised by Frontier and actually included in the game. So that's a huge positive to take away from it. And and thanks for everybody on the stream, and thanks for everybody who's been mucking about with us in game as well. So sad to hear that Galcop no longer exists, but at least we gave it a good entry in the official lore of the game. Someone's just this is an interesting thing. Every so often my camera gets knocked off course. All my ships. I think my ship just been knocked off course actually. Yeah, that's completely. Somebody must have crashed into me. There we go. Try that again. But yeah, so thank you very much for that.
My pleasure, sir.
And
anytime.
It's always nice to see. So there we go. A ship flying off into the sunset with everybody in tow. Thank you everybody who has been in the chat. Thank you very much for everybody who's joined us in the game. Next week we are talking about the great elite dangerous mystery of Raxler, of course. So stay tuned for where we're going to start talking about that, because of course at the moment it's all top secret, as everything with Raxler is. So tune in next week for that, and the lore tour will continue on from there. So hopefully I'll have your company for the future as well. But thank you very much indeed, and get rammed off course by random commanders, but it's been good. And Dave, absolute pleasure. Thank you ever so much, and we will speak soon. So I'll leave you on the stream. Just for a moment, we'll just catch up afterwards once I've shut down the actual streaming bit. But for now, thank you very much, and right on, Commanders, of course.